My name is Jason. I work as a detective in a small town. This town has never had a high level of crime. People here know each other, and the most serious cases were small thefts or domestic conflicts. But everything changed one cool autumn morning. I was sitting in my office sorting through old cases when the bell rang. It was a call to a crime scene. I didn't know yet that this day would be the beginning of the most terrible investigation in my career. I arrived at the scene, a small house on the outskirts of the city. The police had already surrounded the area, and I saw medics carrying the body out. You could tell by their faces that this was no ordinary murder. "Jason, this is something scary," Sergeant Blake told me as he met me at the entrance. "We haven't seen anything like this before." I went into the house. There was blood everywhere. On the walls, on the floor, on the furniture. I saw a woman's body dismembered and scattered around the room. It wasn't just murder, it was something much worse. I approached one of the investigators. "What do we have?" "This is Sarah Thompson," he replied. "Missed 3 days ago. We thought she just ran away, but this..." I bent down to get a closer look at the body. "This looks like the work of a psychopath. We're dealing with a serial killer." Instinct told me that this was just the beginning. I didn't know yet how many victims there would actually be, and I could not imagine how horrible these murders would be. But one thing I knew for sure, this monster will not stop until we find it. The next morning, I got a call from the police chief. He was clearly worried. "Jason, this keeps getting worse. We've found another body, this time in the woods." I immediately went to the scene. The forest was gloomy, with thick vegetation that created an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear. The body was found near an old abandoned house. It seemed like the killer knew what he was doing and wanted us to find him. The victim is a young man, about 25 years old. The body was mutilated and disfigured in the same way as the previous one. On the chest were carved strange symbols, similar to some kind of ritual signs. "What could that mean?" I asked the criminologist. "It looks like some form of ritual murder," he replied. "But we don't yet know the exact nature of these marks. More research time is needed." I felt that this killer was playing with us. He leaves clues, but at the same time he wants to remain elusive. It pissed me off. I couldn't let him continue. We started the investigation by reviewing all old missing persons cases. I was sure that this killer did not appear out of nowhere. He must have acted before, but we simply did not connect these cases with each other. The more I delved into the case, the more horror gripped me. This monster was among us, and it was much closer than we thought. A few days later, we received another call. Another body was found, this time in an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. When I arrived at the site, I was greeted by a somber silence. The police had already surrounded the area, and I saw medics carrying out a body covered in a white sheet. "What do we have this time?" I asked one of the officers. "A woman, about 30 years old," he answered. "The body was found by warehouse workers. They say there was nothing suspicious until they noticed the blood." I joined the team. The smell of death was unbearable. The woman's body was dismembered and scattered in different corners of the room. The same symbols as at previous crime scenes were written on the walls. "This is clearly his work," I said to the investigator. "He doesn't stop." We started checking all possible suspicious activities and personalities in the city. I felt that the killer was somewhere nearby, but he was very careful not to leave direct traces. Every time we approached him, he seemed to disappear into thin air. I spent sleepless nights trying to piece together the puzzle of these gruesome murders. I knew we were dealing with a very intelligent and cunning killer, but I couldn't understand why he was doing this. What motivates him? The more we searched, the more I realized that this monster was preparing something even more terrifying. And if we don't stop him, he will continue to sow death and fear in our city. One evening, when I was returning home after another hard day, I was interrupted by a call on my cell phone. It was Sergeant Blake. "Jason, we got some important information. A man was seen in one of the bars in town who was acting suspiciously and had blood on his clothes. This could be our suspect." I immediately went to the specified bar. It was a small, dark place where the locals would gather after work. The owner of the bar, an elderly man named Sam, said that the suspicious man was sitting in the corner drinking alone, looking very nervous. "He left the bar about an hour ago. Sam said, but he left it and handed me a scrap of paper. The same symbols we saw at crime scenes were drawn on the paper. It was a message from the killer. "He's playing with us," I said, looking at the picture. "He wants us to know that he's always one step ahead." We began checking all the surveillance cameras in the area, hoping to find traces of the suspect, but he disappeared again, as if dissolved in air. My frustration grew. I couldn't let this monster continue its killing spree. I knew we had to find him before he struck again. The next morning, I received another message. The body was found on an abandoned farm outside the city. This was the 4th murder in the last month. Each of them became more and more cruel and terrible. When I arrived at the site, I was greeted by a grim picture. The body of the victim, a young woman, was dismembered and scattered all over Fairway. The entire area was surrounded by police, but even that could not prevent the horrific scene. On the walls of the farm were new symbols, engraved directly on the wood, which seemed to be combined with the previous ones. "Another terrible case," I said, approaching the forensics. "This man doesn't just kill. He leaves a message. He plays with us." We began to analyze all the new data and turned to experts in ritual symbols. We needed to figure out if these signs were part of some sinister ritual or just a way to get our attention. After several days of hard work, we managed to find some signs that these symbols could have been part of an ancient cult, but we couldn't pinpoint what cult or belief it might be. The killer clearly used these symbols to confuse us. We received another tip. A local resident mentioned seeing a suspicious person in the area before the murders. He described the man as a tall figure with dark eyes who seemed very stubborn and vengeful. The suspicious man from the description turned out to be very difficult to identify. No one knew his name or origin. We have turned to all possible sources of information in an attempt to trace his movements. Every time we thought we found a trail, it turned out to be a dead end. Meanwhile, I noticed that the murders started to become more and more specific. Each victim had certain signs that tried to indicate that the killer had a personal vendetta or some specific motive. These murders did not appear to be random. The killer seemed to have a clear plan. One of our investigators, Jane, discovered that all of the victims were either former residents or had ties to some organization that may have been associated with the rituals. This led us to believe that the killer may be part of some underground group or have ties to ancient cults. As we continued to investigate, Sergeant Blake called me again. He reported a new case that was found in an old school that has been defunct for a long time. When I arrived, I realized it was another crime scene, and as always, the symbols on the walls indicated that it was the work of our maniac. At school, I found another body, this time a middle-aged man. The body was strewn about the classrooms, and even in such conditions, my experience allowed me to see that it was a murder with particular brutality. A new message was written on the board. "Every new day, I grow stronger." We realized that the killer was trying to break our morale. He wants us to feel powerless and hopeless, and it seems to give him great comfort. We assembled a team and began analyzing all the evidence collected, trying to understand if there was any connection between these crimes. I was already beginning to lose faith when our investigations did not yield significant results. Gradually, a new version emerged. Perhaps the killer is motivated by parts of a great personal tragedy or trauma. It is possible that all this is part of a long, merciless revenge plan. The investigation continued, and with each new murder, our hopes for a quick solution to the case dwindled. While we were trying to find connections between the victims, we were approached by one of the victims who miraculously survived. Her name was Mary, and she was one of the survivors of the attack, but was able to escape. She described the killer as someone who acted with incredible cruelty and desperation. "He knew what he was doing," Mary said. "He was cold and calculating, and every time I looked at him, I could feel that he was enjoying it." Mary said that the killer even repeated his victims several times, destroying any traces. It gave us new information about how the killer works and what might be going through his mind. We began reviewing surveillance footage from various locations where Mary might have met the killer. Maybe that would help us narrow down the suspects and uncover a motive. Our efforts to find the killer continued, but no new leads led us to concrete results. I felt like we were stuck in this horrible game where every step forward comes with new victims and new puzzles. Sergeant Blake invited me into his office and showed me the new data we had received. These were detailed reports from a laboratory that analyzed all the evidence found at crime scenes. "We found some interesting things," Blake said. "It turns out that the blood of all the victims contains traces of certain drugs. This may be the key to the solution." We began to check possible medical facilities and laboratories that could use these drugs. This could help us narrow down the suspects and find a connection between the killer and the medical staff. At the same time, I continued to search for information about ancient cults and rituals. Maybe our killer isn't just a psychopath, but someone who uses rituals as part of his plan. We kept digging in all directions when our efforts yielded a new result. One of the local residents, who worked in a medical laboratory, admitted that he noticed something suspicious. He saw how one of his colleagues, Richard, visited the laboratory unusually often and took medical drugs. "Richard has always been a bit strange," said the resident. "He usually works alone and never talks about what he's doing." We started checking Richard out, and he turned out to be unusual. He had a medical education, but in many ways his behavior was unfriendly and opaque. We decided to conduct an investigative experiment and take Richard in for questioning. When we met with Richard, he was calm and collected, but his reactions to some questions were strange. We suspected that he might be involved in the murders, but we couldn't find direct evidence. We decided to turn to psychologists to better understand the behavior of our killer. Perhaps this will help us find new approaches to investigation. One of the leading experts, Dr. Jonathan Hawk, agreed to help us. Dr. Hawk analyzed all available data and clues. He noted that our killer probably has a personal motive related to deep psychological trauma or stress. The murders, he said, could be a maniac's way of finding control or regaining power in his life. This type of killer often looks for ways to manipulate and control the situation in order to regain a sense of power, explained Dr. Hawk. Sometimes these actions become a kind of ritual for him, a way to find solace or relief. With the new knowledge, we decided to revisit all the previous cases and focus on possible commonalities among the victims. All of the victims appeared to have some connection to a local medical organization or medical-related events. This discovery made us turn to Richard again. We decided to search his house and laboratory. As a result, many suspicious items were found. Blood samples, medical instruments, and even old medical records that could indicate that he has knowledge about various medical drugs and procedures. Richard denied his involvement in the crimes, but after extensive questioning, we were able to find some inconsistencies in his testimony. His knowledge of the drugs and his behavior indicated that he may indeed have been involved in the murders. We decided to conduct a psychological test to assess his condition and behavior. The results confirmed our suspicions that he had a penchant for violence and control that fit the profile of our killer. However, despite all the evidence, Richard continued to deny his guilt. He remained calm and even showed a certain level of pride at how long he was able to avoid punishment. During one of the interrogations, Richard suddenly remembered one of the murders that we had not yet fully investigated. He spoke of how the killing was special and how he did everything right. We checked his statement and found that Richard may have been involved in this case as an observer or even as an aide. This was further evidence that he may be part of a larger plan or group. In parallel with this, we continued to check all possible connections of Richard. It turned out that he was seeing a psychologist who could help him treat his mental disorders. We decided to contact this psychologist to learn more about Richard and possible mental problems. A psychologist, Dr. Susan Blake, proved to be a key figure in solving this case. She confirmed that Richard had serious mental problems, including obsessions and trying to find a way to express his dark desires. Richard never seemed dangerous at first glance, said Dr. Blake, but he often mentioned dark ideas and desires that could turn violent. Dr. Blake provided us with detailed records and information about Richard's therapy sessions. This allowed us to better understand how his mental state could have escalated into serial killing. We conducted additional interviews with Richard using new data from his therapy sessions. This helped us uncover a few more details about his plans and motivations. He continued to maintain his innocence, but his answers became more vague and uncertain. With each new testimony and piece of evidence, the investigation drew closer to completion. We discovered new connections between Richard and the victims that confirmed his involvement in the murders. But most importantly, we found a way to understand why he did all this. A psychological analysis of Richard and his activities indicated that he used his murders as a way of manipulating and expressing his deepest fears and complexes. It was not just violence. It was a way to control and destroy those who were not to his liking or reminded him of his own shortcomings. We completed the search and questioning and gathered enough evidence to charge Richard. He was detained and awaiting trial, but even in prison he continued to show signs of his mental disorders. While Richard was in prison, we received new information that indicated that his murders may have been part of a larger plan. We were able to discover that he did not act alone, but was part of a group that could be connected to other ritual killings in other regions. We have opened a new investigation, trying to find connections between Richard and this group. It turns out that the murders he's been carrying out may have been part of a larger plan in which he was just a role player. While investigating new leads, we discovered that Richard's murders may have been just part of a sinister ritual that was linked to other murders. We had to turn to specialists in ritual practices to reveal the whole picture. We have also assembled a team to work together with other law enforcement agencies that have dealt with similar cases in other regions. This helped us create a unified picture and understand that our killer may have been part of a larger criminal group. The investigation was still ongoing, but we began to feel that we were getting closer to the solution. Gradually, new clues and evidence indicated that Richard's murders were part of a global campaign of terror and manipulation. We discovered that the group Richard belonged to had specific rituals and techniques that helped them control and intimidate their victims. This allowed them to remain in the shadows and avoid arrest. We continued to work on solving this complex case. Our investigation was nearing completion, and we began preparations to arrest other members of the group. While this was happening, Richard continued to maintain his loyalty to the group, even in prison. This showed us how deeply he was immersed in this dark activity. We were finally able to create a map of all the possible connections and plans of the group. This allowed us to identify the main suspects and prepare for further actions to stop their activities. We received permission to arrest the main members of the group. At the same time, our investigators continued to review all the evidence to gather more information about the activities of this group. The investigation was really gaining momentum, and we started to feel like we were getting closer to solving the case. During one of the arrest operations, we discovered a new victim who became part of this terrible plan. It turned out that she was a victim of ritual actions related to the group's common goal. This new discovery confirmed our suspicions about the global nature of the group and their motivation. We began to find out how this group functioned on a global level. It turned out that they had accomplices in other countries engaged in similar murders. This complicated our investigation, but also helped us understand the big picture. With new knowledge, we focused on revealing all aspects of the group's activities. During one of the interrogations, one of the arrested members of the group agreed to cooperate with us in exchange for a light sentence. This became an important breakthrough in the case. A member of the group told us about the places where they performed their rituals and kept evidence. We organized numerous raids that allowed us to find many important things, including documents and records that confirmed their crimes. With the new evidence, we were able to identify several key individuals who were the leaders of the group. It helped us understand who is behind all this and what their goals are. After extensive investigations and arrests, we were able to confirm that Richard and his group were part of a larger global network that specialized in ritual murders. It was a shocking discovery, but it helped us understand why these crimes were so difficult to investigate. We focused on preparing for trials. A large amount of evidence was prepared to ensure a fair verdict for all members of the gang. It also helped us test our hypotheses and understand how this group was able to avoid detention. While the trials began, we received new testimony from former members of the group. They talked about how they managed to keep their activities secret and how they manipulated people to achieve their goals. One of the most important witnesses confirmed that the group used certain psychological manipulations to control its members. This allowed them to remain organized and keep their activities secret from law enforcement agencies. We also found that some gang members had professional skills in areas that helped them avoid detection, such as medical knowledge or document manipulation skills. With the new data, we were able to reconstruct most of the gang's crimes. This included a detailed reconstruction of their rituals and the methods used to achieve their goals. We also collected testimonies from victims who survived and were able to provide important information about how the group operated and the methods it used to control them. The trials continued, and we received new evidence that confirmed the involvement of all members of the group in the crimes. This helped us to ensure that justice would be done. As the trials drew to a close, we received new information about how the group operated in other countries. This helped us understand how their crimes affected other regions and how they were able to avoid arrest elsewhere. We focused on investigating the group's international ties. This included cooperation with law enforcement agencies of other countries and the exchange of information about their activities. With the new data, we were able to find links between groups in different countries. This helped us understand how criminals organize their activities on a global level. We continued our work to ensure justice for all victims of the group. This included assisting victims and working with psychologists to ensure their rehabilitation. The latest stages of the investigation showed that the group not only engaged in ritual killings, but also participated in other crimes, such as drug trafficking and illegal financial transactions. We completed the preparations for the court hearings and collected all the necessary evidence to prove the guilt of the gang members. This allowed us to ensure justice and punishment for all those involved in these heinous crimes. Trials took place, and most of the group's members were sentenced to lengthy prison terms. This was an important step in the fight against global crime and ensuring justice for victims. After the trials were over, we focused on analyzing all the data we received and developing new methods to fight similar crimes in the future. This included improving our investigative techniques and working with international law enforcement agencies. Investigating this case has become an important lesson for all of us. We realized that fighting global crime requires not only persistence, but also close cooperation between different countries and organizations. We continued to work on improving our methods of investigation and assistance to victims. This was an important step in ensuring safety and justice for all people. The investigation of this case showed us how important it is to remain vigilant and not stop there. We knew that our work was not done and that we must continue to work to ensure justice and security for all. We received new information that indicated that the group may have new members or accomplices. This added new challenges to our work, but we were ready for any difficulties. The investigation continued, and we focused on new possible links to the group. This helped us find new evidence and connections that allowed us to further investigate the case. After completing the main phase of the investigation, we decided to conduct an internal analysis of our work. We gathered all the teams involved in the case to discuss our actions, mistakes, and successes. This was an important step for improving our methods in the future. One of the team members suggested creating a specialized group to investigate such cases. It was a good idea, and we started work on creating such a group. It included specialists from various fields, which helped to better understand and fight such crimes. We also started cooperating with international organizations to share experience and information. This allowed us to obtain new knowledge and technologies that helped in investigations. Thanks to cooperation with international partners, we learned about new methods that were used to fight against criminal groups. This included the use of the latest technologies and methods of investigation. We started implementing new methods in our work. This has helped us to be more efficient and accurate in our investigations, as well as providing greater safety for our employees. Our new investigative methods have helped uncover several new criminal gangs. This was an important achievement that confirmed that our work matters and that we are on the right track. We also worked to raise public awareness of the dangers of such groups. This included holding lectures and seminars for citizens, as well as developing informational materials. Thanks to increased public awareness, we have received many new reports of suspicious activity. This helped us to be more vigilant and detect new threats at an early stage. We also began to cooperate with public organizations involved in supporting crime victims. This helped to provide the necessary help and support for the victims. Our work continued, and we focused on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. We started working on the development of new programs for the training of new employees. This included training in the latest methods of investigation and the use of modern technologies. Thanks to new training programs, we have been able to attract many talented professionals to assist us in our investigations. This increased the efficiency of our work and provided a better understanding of new threats. We also started working on creating new technological solutions for investigations. This included the development of new programs and tools to assist in data collection and analysis. With new technologies, we have been able to significantly improve our work. This made it possible to identify criminals faster and more accurately and collect the necessary evidence. We continued to cooperate with international partners and exchange experience. It helped us to be on the front line in the fight against crime and to introduce new methods in our work. Thanks to international cooperation, we received new knowledge and technologies that helped in investigations. This included the use of the latest data analysis and facial recognition technologies. We have also begun to collaborate with scientific institutions to develop new methods of investigation. This allowed us to gain new knowledge and implement new technologies in our work. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving. We also worked to increase our employees' awareness of new threats and methods of combating crime. This included training and seminars for employees. Thanks to the increased awareness of our employees, we were able to significantly improve our work and ensure greater safety for citizens. This was an important step in the fight against crime. We continued to work on improving our methods and technologies. We knew that in order to successfully fight crime, it is necessary to constantly improve and be one step ahead of criminals. Our new methods and technologies helped identify new threats and ensure safety for citizens. We knew that our work was important and that we had to keep improving.